Hey guys, welcome to the Let's Talk About It Minot podcast. I'm your host, Rob Fuller. I got my trusty sidekick, Jonathan Starr, next to me here today. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, big week this week, wasn't it?
It's been crazy. We traveled, as has been well documented, for a story, and then we had election day, which was crazy, and then that went into Wednesday morning a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
City's been busy. You guys had a big time city council meeting.
We did. We had a lot of talked about this week.
Yeah,
so.
It's been action packed. So yeah.
How was the election for you? Like the federal stuff? Did you stay up late watching it all? What time did you finally call it?
You know, I know this number, but I forget off the top of my head. I once Trump hit 270, so the election was over, I went to bed, basically. Okay. I didn't stay up much longer after that.
So I think they called it, what was it? He won Wisconsin at 12:48 our time or whatever, and they called it. And then they said he was going to come out and speak, so I tried to stay awake, dude. And next thing I knew, I woke up at like 3 o'clock, and I was shutting the TV off.
Like,
so
forget this. Yeah, it took forever for him to get out.
Pretty crazy.
Well, you called it. You get credit for that. I have this soft call on this, which was I went with the loser route.
Okay.
Because I said whoever wins will win in a landslide.
Yep.
So I didn't say that they would go and take all the swing states, but that's what ended up happening. But I was like, I went very weak. You actually said that Trump was going to win and that he was going to win all the swing states. So that's
well
done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, like I said, I'd been digging into polls and numbers and everything, and there's so much out there. You know, we've talked about this at length, right? Like, what do you believe? What don't you believe? So you actually have to go and kind of do some of your research. And like we were talking about just a minute ago, the Iowa poll that they put out on Friday, and Ann Seltzer, who has, like we said, a sterling reputation, puts out this turd of a poll that says all of a sudden Trump isn't up 4 anymore. Harris is up 3, right? The Friday right before election. And so that everybody's like, oh my God, you know, it's happening. It's going, you know, at least people on the left and everything that you heard. And, but then Saturday you started to hear people, that's a fake poll. That's a fake poll. And this is what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks with some of the rhetoric and everything that has to stop in this country. The fact that, and I don't know what Ann Seltzer actually knew or didn't know. I know I did see that she's put out a comment now that, well, we're going to have to look into how this happened.
Well, of course you are.
Right. But, so, I mean, we go through the election, right? They say Harris is up 3, and Trump actually wins Iowa by 14 points. So that poll they put out was 17 percentage points off from what they said it was going to be.
That's just crazy.
To me, that is nothing but a blatant lie trying to steer what happens in the election.
Yeah.
And
feels like if I was that, I'd become pretty uncredible pretty fast. Uncredible.
Yeah.
I mean, lack credibility. I don't know what the right word is there.
And that's one of the things I was saying, you know, all the pollsters, all the news agencies, all of the, everybody out there that just decided to lie and put out whatever information, it's time that we start to unaccreditate these people, take away from them their credentials. You're not a news agency anymore. You're the National Enquirer. You're not a pollster anymore. You're somebody just normal in Iowa who's keeping track of everything.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm glad in this instance that the American public saw through it, right?
Right.
I mean,
I think it makes you realize that in a situation like that, trusting the betting markets is probably the way to go.
Well, and the betting markets were dead on. If you went back and you look at, what's
Polymarket, I think.
Polymarket, and Vegas. Like, if you look at those two things, there was no way Trump was losing that race.
Right.
And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened.
I read something, and the internet is full of false things. So
it is?
Maybe this, that's what Abraham Lincoln said.
I thought if you read it on the internet, it was true, right?
Yeah, right. But supposedly there's a French company that's with the betting markets with one of the platforms that you can bet on.
Okay.
And they were asked, how are you guys able to get it accurate? And they said, our research was conducted based off of asking people who they thought their friends were going to vote for.
Oh, really?
And it's like, okay, that makes sense because, I mean, obviously you've been on here and you've been a proponent for Trump, but But there's a lot of people, they talk about the quiet vote for Trump and even probably for Harris for some people. They're trying to say in Pennsylvania that there was a lot of wives that were going to be voting for Harris that wouldn't have known. But somebody that was a friend to that wife would have known that she was going to vote for Harris because they would have known the interactions.
Well, sure. I mean, and I guess it seems maybe a little unscientific, but obviously they were pretty accurate with their predictions, right? And I mean, to your point, talking about the women in Pennsylvania, how about, Trump getting 25% of the African-American vote and Trump getting 45% of the Latino vote. And I forget what the number was, but on women, he scored above and beyond in every category across this country that they said, oh, those people will never vote for Trump, right?
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. He went and took over every demographic, it seems like possible. I'm sure there's something that Harris won, but...
No, there wasn't. Well, and I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, if you go back, every demographic, I think it shows everybody was just so tired of this last 4 years, the inflation, the economy, the border. You know what? Care about our country instead of everything else. Yeah. And so I think
that's a good point.
They got the slap in the face, and I mean, not only to the point where we got President Trump elected, but we took the Senate, right? Which, I mean, we had a slight minority there, 2 votes before, 51-49. Now we're at 53, and there's a potential that we could get to 54, even 55, depending on what happens in Nevada and Arizona. But I heard you say they had called Newsmax.
So this Decision Desk.
Oh, Decision Desk
called Nevada for
the incumbent, that gal.
For the incumbent, her name, Jackie Rosen.
Yeah.
And then some people are saying in Arizona that Carrie Lake is winning the drops as on a proportion that would get her to be the one that would be elected in, but we'll see.
So
She's been closing the gap.
54, 54-46.
Right,
really?
Yeah.
We haven't seen numbers like that in the Senate in quite a while. And I mean, then it sounds like the Republicans are going to hold the House too. So, I mean, think about all the things that they can get done if they hold all seats of power.
See, that's a question I had for you.
Okay.
So if the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidential office, what should be the top 3 things that are taken care of by the midterms to say that's why you should vote red again in the midterms?
Oil, become energy independent again, and start our domestic oil production back up. Get the pipelines in place. That's 1. 2, finish the border wall and stop that. And to that point, did you hear about the huge caravan that was traveling across Mexico? Coming to the United States border in anticipation of it's starting to dissipate now. They're like, there's not even going to be this mass blob of people coming up here anymore.
And then I saw a headline, and I didn't read it, but Hamas is saying that they want a ceasefire.
Yeah, well, I saw that was right after he was elected Wednesday or whatever. Hamas said, we're ready to do a ceasefire. But then did you hear Trump had a call yesterday with Netanyahu?
Okay.
And he said, I want the war with Hamas to be over by the time I get into office.
Wow.
Is what he told Netanyahu.
Incredible.
And, I mean, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news today. The Biden administration is getting all the weaponry and everything that we promised Ukraine ready. Okay. They're going to try and get it moved over there before Trump gets into office because they don't think he'll follow through with the support for Ukraine. So.
Right. Well, they're not wrong.
No, I mean, again, hundreds of billions of dollars going over there to fight a proxy war against Russia. And, again, war is good for certain people, but for the rest of the world, or for the rest of the United States, at least, it hasn't been very good.
Right.
So,
So
anyway, that was 1, oil, the border. 3, I think, is you're going to see at least what will lead people to vote for Republicans again in 22 or in 26. I think you're going to see a dismantling of our federal government by Elon Musk and those guys, like the likes of which we've never seen. Yeah. And I think it's glorious.
Right. That will be interesting to see.
All the 3-letter agencies that are going to disappear, get slimmed down, whatever. I can't wait.
Right. Musk, his claim was that he could decrease the budget by $2 trillion. Yeah. And that's a tall order right there.
Even if he gets half of that.
Yeah, exactly.
$1 trillion.
Just gets us back on track.
Yep.
It's aggravating, though, and when you hear senators say, "Oh, that's impossible," It's like, okay, Musk, just please do it.
Yeah.
Just please do it.
Go in there
because
and
they said it's not possible to just get it done.
Yeah. I mean, the difference between a business mind and a political mind, right? I mean, and that's the problem. Our country is run by bureaucrats and politicians. And if you ran our country like a business, as Trump showed, even though I didn't agree with everything he did, the way he ran the economy and the country was good for the American people. And that's what he promised. And that's what he did. So...
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
How about you? What are your top 3 things that they got to do to get people to vote for him again in 26?
Yeah, so you're going to turn that question on me.
Absolutely.
I honestly don't have a prepared statement on this.
Well, that's even better then.
Yeah. I think that immigration, just because of all the noise that has been made about it, and I believe that there is a problem with that. I'm not saying the noise shouldn't be there, but they've made that a huge deal, so there needs to be a solution for that in order for people to be able to trust them to vote again.
Yeah.
I believe that the economy as well. So cutting debt, but also the inflation and things like that are going on pretty heavily. I think that there's got to be some solutions that are brought there to get that trending in a better direction. And so in some ways I'm copying you. So I apologize about that.
No.
But I would go to the wars. I think the one war, though, specifically that I'd go to is not the Hamas one with Israel, is the Ukraine war. Simply because that was something that Trump hounded on about that would not be happening if he was in office and all that rhetoric.
Yep.
So I think that needs to be covered in order for there to be trust in the midterms. Those are probably just top 3 main things that were campaigned upon. So it's kind of maybe the easy way out, but I feel like those are the things that people are going to be most likely to bring back and say, you didn't do this, and this is why you should vote blue.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think you're right on. I think what do you think of the cabinet people that he's starting to name and pick out and point out? I mean,
well, he has I thought it was ironic, neat, whatever, that he has the first female chief of staff.
Apropos, right? After they accuse him of not liking strong, smart women, he does something. Hey, first chief of staff ever as a woman.
Right.
Huh. Now what do you guys got to say?
Yeah, what do you have to say about that? So I thought that was cool. I think that when he builds his cabinet out this time, it's going to be so much different than the first time. And he's already addressed that. And I guess that sometimes, though, it feels like people think with Trump that there's a disconnect between his lips and his actions. It feels like that's what the left tries to bring.
Okay.
They try to bring spots where, so an example would be I believe it was the Ukraine war. Somebody found a clip of him saying the day after I'm elected, that war will end. So they go and they try to find the disconnect. And I understand that it needs to be taken in context and all that stuff. But it feels like sometimes that's what they hound on. And I think this time around he has said, and we are actually going to see it happen in his cabinet, where he does not choose people that have been in DC forever or government forever. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out when you have a bunch of business minds. Yeah. And maybe even some corporate minds that are in DC versus a bunch of people that have been there for 20 years. I think that it's going to be a tremendous difference. And whether that's something that we need forever, probably not. It's probably something that we can only withstand as a country for 16 years or something. And then it will shift. And if we stayed on that path too long, is what I'm saying, then we might go too far to one side. Like there has to be a balance, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
But we've been so far in the path that we've been in for so long, and it's just tearing us down at this point. Yeah,
our country is kind of unrecognizable from what it was even 10 years ago. You know, I mean, coming out of the crash in 2008, 2009, right, with the home loan debacle and everything that was going on. I think people coming out of that felt pretty good, and then things started to change. So you're absolutely right. I mean, you have these, seems like decade type shifts, and I think we're going into one right now, you know, and I think it's fantastic because honestly, I think what we're about to see has never been attempted. Did you see who Elon Musk and Trump are going to meet with?
I did not.
So the guy that won the presidency in Argentina,
okay,
that took over and basically wiped out the whole government down there.
Oh no,
Elon Musk and Trump are going to have a sit down with him. So I think what we're going to see in this country is good, and it's much needed. This is an opportunity without having a civil war for the people to take the power back, and we got the people in place. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I knew a little bit about him. I've done more research since all this happened. I think he's going to be fantastic for overhauling the FDA and all these agencies, food and drugs. I heard the other day, Trump told him, "You have 2 years. You can do anything you want in the next 2 years, with the exception of oil. You can't touch oil. You can't talk about oil." Yeah. But he said, with the FDA, food and drug, do anything you want. He said, make America healthy again.
Wow.
And if that's what he plans to do when he brings these people in, same thing with Musk. Go dig into the federal government and cut it.
Right.
I think those things are fantastic, because bigger government always translates to less for the people.
Yeah.
So smaller government is what we need.
So the path that we've been on was all right for the first, let's see, 220 years of our country. At the end of 2008, we had a gross national debt of right around 10 trillion.
Yeah. Where are we today?
And now it's 35, 36, 37 trillion.
Yep.
I saw a clip of Massey from Kentucky. What a guy. He has a clip on that he wears, and it tracks the national debt.
Oh, constant. Yeah. You see the number changing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just this little clip that he actually has on his suit coat or whatever.
Yeah.
And he is telling a story of how the way it works is it hooks up to his Wi-Fi. When it's in his Wi-Fi, it resets to the accurate number.
Okay.
And then it just takes that pace.
Yep.
And it goes on. And he's like, one day it hooked up, and I looked at it and it went down. And I was like, what in the world's going on? Why is it going down? And so he called a couple people, and they're like, yeah, the reason why it's going down is because it's tax day. So
people are paying in.
So they'll pay their taxes, and it'll go down for a couple days, and then they'll go back up.
I guess I never even thought about that. Have you ever gotten on and looked at the real life clicker?
It's too discouraging for me.
It's nuts. I mean, it's nuts how fast that thing turns.
Reality is brutal.
Yeah, but huge. I think huge win for our country overall with what happened.
So some people will be concerned about too many, and I don't think that there should be an office full of rich people, a cabinet full of billionaires, but and trillionaires, not even billionaires, trillionaires. But
is there trillionaires still?
Well, Musk would be, right, or is he still just billion? He's not a trillionaire.
I think.
Yeah, you're right. He's low 200s.
Yeah.
I was thinking he was trillionaire, but you're right.
I was going to say, holy cow, did that happen?
He's quarter billion.
Okay.
Or a quarter of trillion. I think, though, that when you have people like that, if you get them all in a room and it's just them making decisions, again, you're going to be unbalanced. Balance isn't, I will always talk about balance. But you have people that are thinking about their future and how they're going to be able to continue to make money, and that does affect us.
Absolutely.
Differently than people that are worried about laws and about dynamics and about how everyone feels.
Well, and to your point, I think what he's going to do, whether they're billionaires or politicians or whatever you want to call these people, I think what he's going to do is bring in people that actually care about America,
right,
and the middle class, because they realize those are the people that make them money, rather than just worrying about their own proliferation or agenda or power or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, which is what a lot of the bureaucrats done. And I mean, I'm going to point to Joe Biden's administration for the last 4 years, whoever that was. That had nothing to do with doing anything better for the United States or the people in America. Yeah. That was solely to bring in people that aren't American and give them the benefits and everything that
absolutely
we should see. So
I agree. Did you see there's a look at a 2030 census estimation of electoral votes?
No.
And it's neat.
Okay.
Because it bases it off of what the 2030 census will be, and then it shows how the electoral votes
where states are going to gain or lose.
Yeah.
I did see a brief clip of that. Didn't you send it to me?
I think I may have.
Okay, yeah.
And California is going to be hurting.
Yeah, they're going to lose 7 seats, was it?
Something like that. So there'll be 12 based off of the electoral map today of the 2024 election. There'll be 12 votes that would just naturally switch from Democrat to Republican.
Really?
12 votes.
Yeah. Did you see them talking after the election about those specific states? So they talked about California.
Yeah.
They talked about New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, the 4 bluest states in the whole country, right? And did you see how close Trump was?
New Jersey was barely blue.
Yeah. Trump, and we had talked about this on the last podcast, that one pollster had said that Biden won New York by 23 points, and Harris would be lucky if she won by half of that. And by God, she was at about 11.2% is all she won New York by.
Wow.
And they were talking, at least in what I was watching, about how the demographic is changing in this country, where people thought they were Democrats because that was the party of the people. Now they're realizing, hey, I'm not a Democrat anymore because that's flipped, and that they're for all the wealthy people. I'm a Republican now.
Right.
So
yeah. So think about this. Virginia, which was in play.
Yep.
It was considered in play. Kamala Harris, 51.8%. Donald Trump, 46.6%.
Yep.
New Jersey, a blue state. Kamala Harris, 51.6%. Donald Trump, 46.5%.
Yeah.
That's close.
It is. I mean, the states, and we talked about this on the last podcast. You know, you had told me what were the 3 big things. I told you, I said, watch Virginia, watch New Mexico, and then we talked about New York, how close that was going to be. And all of those things were true and accurate. I mean, boy, for a while, I thought Virginia was actually going to go red.
Stayed competitive for a very long time.
It did. So now one other thing on that, and then we can jump off the federal stuff. Did you see the total votes? Okay, so there was 20 million less votes this time than there was 4 years ago.
This is a good conversation because we talked about this on one of the talks, the live talks.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is, I know that there's still votes trickling in, but it doesn't look like Trump will even reach how many he got in 2020.
No. Both of them, Trump had 76 million or 77 million, whatever it was in 2020.
Yeah.
And I think he's only at 72 or 74, but he still beat Kamala by 5 million votes.
And there was 81 trillion. Or
81 million.
I just really want to use the word
You
trillion
do. You
today,
like that trillion thing.
I'm just on it today. So I'm sorry. 81 million votes for Biden in 2020. And now Kamala was under 70.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, because we were being
I'll tell
told,
you what that means.
Okay.
All the conspiracy theorists were right, Jonathan. There was a lot of voter fraud with the mail-in stuff, I think. And I'm not saying one side or the other. I'm saying maybe across the board. But how unlikely is it that 20 million people don't go vote again?
Yeah. No, I hear that. Okay. But what I don't understand is this. If you go back to 2012, both sides increased in voter count.
Yep.
Every year.
Okay. Since then?
Yeah. Okay. Since then. 2012 to 2016, there was an increase in votes. In 2016, then there's this huge jump in 2020.
Yep. And now we go backwards.
Sides. And now we go backwards on both sides.
Yep.
But we're told there's more early voting than ever going on right now.
84 million people was the total for early voting. So 84 million people voted ahead of time. And that means roughly, 70 million people came out day of? Because I think totals are about right around 156 million. Is that right?
Yeah, that'd be close.
So
that's the part where I'm having
What does it
struggles.
tell you?
One, it tells me that, I had this idea that maybe the day of voting would be down. And I think it was average. It was like in North Dakota, they're like, we had record early voting.
Yep.
And then we had just an average day of voting.
I think what they said was normal across the board.
Then how do the numbers work?
What do you mean?
The numbers don't work then. Because if you have record early voting and then you have normal across the board day of, how do we still come to the same amount of votes?
Well,
that's
think
what I don't understand.
Versus 2020 is what you're comparing, right?
Yeah.
I think you have to throw 2020 out. Because like you said, 2012 and 2016, you saw moderate increases, right? But in 2020, we saw an increase like we've never seen before in this country. On both sides, absolutely. And while some of that may have been real, let's call it, I think a good portion of that was fake, and it was, again, not one side or the other. It was both.
I don't doubt that. I would not be surprised that some of it was fake. But what I'm having trouble, and some will throw stones at me and not like me for this one, but I'm having trouble saying is that it was just on the Democrat side. Because that's the classic argument, is that they're going to go and create votes. Well, and I don't know what happened on the Republican side, but I'm just having struggles with them both jumping by 10 million, and then this year the Republicans going down in votes. Yeah. I'm just having trouble saying that there wasn't that there, and I understand that there was very loose mail-in laws, and that would used in 2020, and that would increase voter count on both sides. There would be an increase because of that.
And that's absolutely right. And let's look at it statistically, right? Yeah. Statistically, you're probably going to have a portion of the population that sits it out, right? You do that. I mean, and we talked about it. They call them the marginal voters that only vote once every 3 or 4 elections or whatever. And they may have voted last time and decided, hey, I'm not voting this time, right? So there's a portion of that. And out of the 20 million difference, let's call it 5 million. So let's say 25% of that. Yeah. Okay. That's still 75% of those votes. Yeah. Where did they go? Where did they come from?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And it looks very suspicious.
And I mean, what you saw this year, what you didn't see in 2020, was you saw polling places that had both Republican and Democrat officials at it. It wasn't just where one was allowed and the other wasn't, and weird things happened. You had lawyers on both sides ready to take it to task if something nefarious was going to happen. And so, I mean, everybody was paying attention because everybody knew what happened in 2020.
Yeah, that's one thing that the Republicans did a good job of. Typically, they have a pathetic ground game. They did a much better job. There's a story about a guy, I think his name's Scott Presley, maybe.
Okay.
Moved to Pennsylvania.
Yep, and got the Amish to vote. I was just going to bring that up.
Gotcha.
Like, did you see how many Amish people he got to go out and vote? Did you see the number they attributed? 180,000.
That's incredible. That turns an election.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, like most of the time, from what I was reading about it, Amish people don't even go vote. They're like, we're going to do our thing, but it had affected them so much already too in the last 4 years. They're like, let's do it. And that guy, I mean, what a story.
Yeah, you know, that's neat. Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, more power to him.
Absolutely. We need more people like that.
Someone needs to move to New York or California.
Are you volunteering?
No,
because I couldn't live in either of those places. So,
some tasks are too big. Yeah. But even New York, like you cannot live in New York City, but I mean,
well, upper New York, I've heard is kind of pretty, and it's Republican and whatever, but I don't like their gun laws there, so I won't live there.
Yeah, California would be the same for that.
So, any other federal stuff you want to talk about?
Oh, that's pretty good right there.
I mean, we covered most of it. So, let's skip. Well, hold on. Let me ask you. Do you want to talk about state stuff next, or do you want to talk about city stuff next?
Let's go city.
Okay. Let's leave the state stuff till the end?
Yeah, we'll finish the state stuff.
So big week in the city, kind of a sad week too. I just want to take a minute and issue my condolences to the family of Master Officer Mitch Watney. He was a Minot PD officer. We lost him this last week, and it's been a tough week in the city of Minot. So we're eternally grateful for Officer Watney's service to the city of Minot. And our condolences to the family. So I was at the funeral this morning. It was beautiful.
Very good. Yeah, very sad.
Yes.
Definitely tough. Two in the last 2 years, year and a half.
Two in the last two and a half years. Yeah, I mean, it's not a thing that we've ever faced or had here in Minot. So I think that's something we need to look at. Why is it all of a sudden happening?
Right. And
maybe we'll get to the bottom of that. But
yeah, absolutely.
Big week on the city council, though. I didn't see you there. You were traveling for your
driving back from Dunseith, North Dakota.
Yeah, we had a lot to discuss. I mean, you know, there was some really good things on the city council, and we had some really good discussion. I guess, you know, we can start with the land lease, the city land lease thing with Mickelson.
Okay. Yeah.
That was, again, when you're sitting up there as a city council member, one of the things you got to weigh is what's best for the city, not only just what's best for the situation. And I think this is one of those situations where there's no good answers. And, you know, I mean, Mr. Mickelson has done nothing wrong in any way, shape, or form. But going out there and digging into this thing could cost us millions of dollars. If you watched the meeting back and you heard Jason Sorensen, because I asked him, what would a new wastewater treatment facility cost us? And he said, well, that was $90 million 5 years ago. And I was like, that number even stunned me because I'd seen 30 to 40 million. So in this instance, I think the best thing for the city, the best thing for the residents, just let this keep going until we don't have to, the EPA steps in and says either we have to do a wastewater treatment facility and the lagoons are done, or, we don't want to dig into this one. This is one of those ones where you open it up and it is ugly.
It gets worse. I think it was good that it sounded like he was agreeable, Mickelson was agreeable to having it where the agreement was at least be able to be looked at. It wasn't necessarily an automatic renewal.
Yeah, and I mean, I think
that's a good thing.
It is. But again, in this case, does it really matter?
Right, and it may not.
Yeah, that situation out there is so confuddled. Yeah. It doesn't warrant us digging in. And yes, Mr. Mickelson, the discussion I had with him, he's like, I don't want to fight about this, right? I don't want to get lawyers involved. And I said, we don't want that either. I said, so let's, and I think ultimately, two city councils ago when we made the decision to pull it back and have put out for bid, I don't think all of us as a council knew what was going on. And I know Jason and Harold tried to stick some of that, give us some of that information, but we weren't hearing it. So it was good we were able to go back and look at it and fix it, I think, for the city's best interest. So.
I think that was good that there was that resolution on it. It sounds like it's a little bit of a sticky situation for the city, though, that the city attorney mentioned. This is basically a settlement at this point, where the city's kind of stuck in the position that they're in.
Well, they are, because I mean, ultimately, again, if we go out there and we do a hydrological study and it's found that whatever's happening with the lagoons is affecting his land, it's going to cost a lot of money. So, I mean, call it a settlement situation, call it a arbitrary situation, whatever you want to call it. It benefits Mr. Mickelson a little bit, and it keeps us from having to pay millions and millions of dollars.
Right. So. Yeah. Good that it's settled, and I go back to the point, I think it's great that you guys are looking at all contracts, making sure that those automatic renewals are at least looked at more often. So then city councils will know the story a lot easier.
Absolutely.
8 years from now, I know it's like 5 or 10 year on the automatic renewal, we won't be running into the same situation as the city council with new people.
Right. Well, and if you look at when we first talked about it, if you remember, Alderman Janser was like, well, I'm trying to remember, because it was like 12, 15 years ago, I mean.
Exactly.
And we haven't looked at it or touched it since. So it's good that even if we do one automatic renewal, right? Yep. And you look at it between 5 and 10 years, people can remember. But when you start getting out of that time frame, I mean, heck, we've talked about this. I walk into the other room and I forget what I'm going to do. So try and ask me something 10 years later. So.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Glad that got done.
What was next? Souris Valley?
Yeah, let's go to Souris Valley.
Go to Souris Valley, okay. What did you think of that?
That's just a bad deal.
That's another tough situation for the city. I mean, Minot Vet Clinic was really doing us a solid favor, and I understand why they opted out. I'm not throwing any stones.
Why didn't they just ask for more money?
Well,
they literally don't want to do it anymore?
From what I understand, and again, I haven't verified this, but what I was told was that Minot Vet Clinic was recently sold, and the new owner is a vet. And the Minot Vet Clinic had gotten a reputation as a kill facility because they did euthanize some animals from time to time, not necessarily city animals, but and so the new owner or whatever did not want that reputation, so they chose to back themselves out of it. And from a business point of view, I totally understand that. That makes sense. You don't, you're coming in and you want to flourish. You don't want to have that reputation hanging over you. So
there's this deal with the Souris Valley, and honestly, we'll get into it, but it sounds like, there could be some organizational problems there.
We're worried a little bit about that.
Yeah, you could tell that in the questioning, but it's just a 1-year term. There's a chance that the Minot Vet Clinic would be open down the road to actually putting in a proposal.
Well, and even if they don't do that, I know there are a couple other people out there that were talking about putting in RFPs. For some reason, they weren't able to this time.
Yeah.
And Minot Vet Clinic had said, hey, we would provide you the vet services if you wanted us to. So over the course of the next year, we'll have the opportunity to kind of formulate what we want and then get some RFPs. And instead of having about 60 days to make a decision, hopefully we have a few months to make that decision. Right. So
I have a question though.
Okay.
Because Sears Valley Animal Shelter said that they could take care of the cats and dogs.
Yep.
800 in a year.
I guess that's what we bring in is 800. Now, one thing I want to say about that, and City Manager Harold Stewart brought it up a little bit, and we touched on it. We don't have a licensing requirement in the city of Minot.
Right.
I think we need to implement a licensing requirement in the city of Minot, because ultimately what we need to do, and just like you have at hospitals and other places, you have animals that they call frequent flyers. Yeah. Like somebody's cat will show up 6 times a year when they need their shots. You know, they all of a sudden get out and they show up. Right. And I think what we need to do is we need to have a licensing requirement within the city, a little bit of fee income there. I'm not talking exorbitant numbers. Yeah. But those animals then have a collar on, and we know who they belong to. And then we charge back those citizens for the services that we as a city provided for their pets or whatever. And if they don't want to pay for it, then I guess we will...
Next steps.
Yeah, next steps. So
makes sense. Finding a solution to that seemed like it probably...
That's a huge...
You need to figure that out.
You know, and I'll be honest, like when I had dogs when I was living out in Colorado, and I was irritated that I had to go register them, right? I mean, you're like, just money, city trying to get money. But now where I sit here and I see this, I understand why they had those requirements.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Then they were asked about, well, what if you get a snake, or what if you get a horse or whatever? What are you going to do? Well, the Minot Vet Clinic's been nice, and they'll take care of the horses. There was never a resolution for what's going to happen to the snakes. What's going to happen to the snakes, Rob?
We're going to drop them in your yard, Jonathan.
Oh, no. That's what I was afraid of.
You're not a snake guy?
I'm not a snake guy.
You know, I think for all of the animals that are not your norm, cats, dogs, guinea pigs, hamsters, whatever, I think Minot Vet Clinic is going to step in and help with all of that stuff, the farm animals and some of the exotics, as they call them, because they have the people that are licensed to do it.
Very good. So, that makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense. That was one of my worries. Probably a bigger worry if I had one with it. See, I made a comment like this on Minot Talk. Like, if I lost my dog, I don't have a dog, but if I had a dog and I lost it, I'd be sad and I'd find it.
Well, you'd think so.
Yeah.
But if somebody else will pick it up and give it its shots and feed it and make it healthy again before you picked it up, would you be okay with that too?
Right. I mean, for the most part, I'd be okay with that. If I lost a cat, I probably wouldn't worry about it. So, I wouldn't worry about it at all, actually.
I have a friend, and I'm not going to go into the whole story, but when we were growing up, you know, when you're in high school and stuff, you wanted to stay at your friend's house so you guys could sneak out and go do whatever. We were walking up to my friend's girlfriend's house one night in like midnight, right? We'd snuck out of his house. And I didn't know this. I'd known him for years. And we're walking up the hill, and a cat starts coming towards us.
Oh, no.
And he starts freaking out. Freaking out. Like, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? It's a cat. It's, get it away from me. Yeah, like, he'd had an incident as a little kid where a cat attacked him. And so even as a 15, 16-year-old kid, he was deathly afraid of cats.
That's terrible.
And
that's old.
I won't say his name, but you know who you are. And his parents, I actually saw his parents the other night when we were trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
So,
when I was a kid, there was a cat that got locked in a car. It wasn't our cat. Some random cat got locked in our car. And so then it just started tearing the upholstery apart because it was trying to get out. Yeah. But that's a cat for you.
Yeah, it is.
Nonetheless, though, and I don't know that there's anything worth commenting on it, but it was interesting to hear it felt like they were probably all right. It probably just, there wasn't a lot of confidence in the numbers that Sears Valley Animal Shelter was presenting, but it sounded like they had received a grant. That grant is supposed to get them beyond the first of the year. Yes. But part of the things that it was supposed to get them was the infrastructure set up so they could be sustainable, where they had a bet on they'll get some software upgrades, get some other things where they'd be sustainable throughout the entire year, hopefully.
Yeah, and that was when I kind of leading into that, when I asked them about the numbers that they had put in the RFP. You know, I knew that was their estimate, their yearly estimate. And so when they said, our P&L matches that, not that I'm in any way, shape, or form suggesting that he's not being honest about that, but I ran businesses enough and I was in banks for long enough. Your P&L never matches.
Yes,
and so I think we're going to have to, as a city, with this contract, have some kind of financial reporting, either maybe not monthly, but quarterly. Hey, what does it look like? So we know, that the financial viability is there for them to keep going, because the last thing we want to happen is for them to get into this, us give them the money, and then all of a sudden they fold up and close shop.
Can't do it
for whatever reason. Maybe not even their own fault, but and then we're left high and dry again. So.
Right. Yeah, that'd be a terrible, especially mid contract. But it sounds like even with the city, it's going to be an estimated $198K or something like that.
It's a big number. I mean, and again, kudos to the Minot Vet Clinic for the deal that they had been giving us. But yeah, these numbers, again, that's where the licensing comes in, right? Because as you heard Captain Sondheim tell me, we collect about 25% of what we spend when we take care of these animals. If we have the licensing done, all of that can then be billed back to the customer, or the citizen, whatever you want to call them, to the citizen. And the city isn't going to end up having to pay for that. That's not coming out of our sales tax or property tax or whatever other fund you want it to come out of. We're getting reimbursed for that, and which we should be.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Good. I said it.
Yeah.
I said interesting.
Very interesting. I mean, there's the catchphrase, the tagline.
It's back.
What was the last thing we discussed on City Council? I forget.
It's the Circle K project.
Oh, yes, the Circle K.
I was circling around it.
Yes. I see what you did there.
Yes.
So what kind of questions you got there? Where do you want to start?
Yeah. There was a lot to digest with this one.
There was. Obviously, it's a tough situation because we want development and growth in the city of Minot, right? I mean, we've been talking about this ad nauseum for the last 2 years. Everybody, there's tons of projects going on. There's tons of projects they want to do, but they don't have the economic development going on to help grow. So what do? They raise your property tax, whether it be through the levy or through the assessed value, to pay for those things. And now that there's a few of us on the council that are like, we're not going to let that happen, we have to come up with other alternatives. Sure, sales tax is one of them, and that's something we can discuss. But growing business and development organically, where people and businesses want to come into your city and invest $15 million or more, that's going to bring you anywhere from $400,000 to $800,000 a year in tax, and to say no to them because this driveway, we don't like it, and quite honestly, in everything I saw and looked at, we didn't have a good reason to keep saying no. This has been going on for 2 years. There was the Collier's traffic study was done, and then the city had its rebuttal, and then the Collier's had a rebuttal letter. And if you heard city engineer Lance Meyer talking, and I asked him, all of a sudden the new goalpost or thing that they talk about is this sight distance, right? You can't see. And nowhere in the last 2 years had that ever been talked about. First it was this, and then it was something else, and now it's the sight distance issue. And quite honestly, I felt that we were maybe being a little bit disingenuous with the developer and with Circle K or Holiday Gas Station, and just digging in our heels as a city and saying, nah, we're not going to do that. And again, I'm not judging right, wrong, or otherwise. I'm just saying I felt like that's what we were doing. And luckily, we had Mr. Coughlin speak, and I did know, I had heard, I didn't talk to any of them. I did hear Circle K people were watching it on YouTube to see what happened. And then we had, the city.
Was he getting text messages?
John?
Yeah.
Coughlin?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah. And you don't need to comment on this, but he would go up there. We talked about it on Tuesday. He would go up there and make a comment like, yeah, Gord, that was talked about. That might be something that would work. And then this council would start talking about, okay, well, maybe we should approve it basically with that. Would that be possible? And then he'd go back like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know that that's going to work. And I was like, I wonder if he's getting messages like, we won't do that.
And he very well could have been, I mean, and
that's fine.
Well, and to Circle K's point, look, they had done, everything. They'd gone to all lengths to meet the city's demands and requirements. The only thing they said is, hey, we want this because that's what our engineers said is the safest. And looking at it, I mean, even the city agreed with that, yeah, that was the best option, but why are we saying no then, right? Okay. Why are we saying no? So, so anyway, I he may have been getting messages. I don't know much about that. I just know that it needed to be looked at, and we needed to come out of the shadows and finally say, hey, we're open to development, right? And I made a comment on there about Walmart. I don't know if you know.
I heard it.
Well, and that's the thought process, right? We are sitting here and everybody is upset about that road in front of the high school up there.
Right.
If we'd have done, and I know this wasn't only on the city, right?
Yep.
But if we'd have done the right thing and gotten Walmart up there, that road would be all taken care of. Walmart was going to finish that road, make it a 4-lane road with a turn lane in the center, and we wouldn't have had to spend millions of dollars to do that. But again, because we think we know better than a multi-million-dollar national brand on how things should be done, we didn't get that, and so that road is where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, that was tough with that back and forth there. So basically, the discussion came down to on 13th Street. They wanted the turning lane to be, or the ability to turn into their place of business from 13th Street.
Correct. It's just a right-in only.
Right-in only. So you can't take a left turn in.
No.
So if you're going north on 13th Street, you can't.
You'd have to turn on 21st and go in on those entrances.
Yeah. See, that then I was told by somebody later that maybe that you could take a left turn in. No. And if so, then I was like, okay, I could understand how that could be problematic. But yeah, that is interesting.
It is, because I mean, if you look right across the road, that entrance in and out of Northwest Tire, that creates so many problems over there, because you have people coming from north going south on 13th that then stop in the dead center of traffic and try and turn left into there. Yeah. And I don't know if it's true or not. I did read a comment that the owner of Northwest Tire, he's like, I'd be fine with having that removed because it's been a pain in the butt no matter what.
Right.
And I asked Lance Meyer that question. So we have a guy across the street that has a turn in there that we allow, but we're not going to allow a right in only here. Why would we do that? Well, that one was grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Well, okay, fine. If that's what we're going to use as our rationalization for it, then you have to allow this one over here too, even because people aren't going to be able to turn across traffic into it.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah. If it's not turning across traffic, it seems like, so the worst case scenario is that you get 15 people that are, cut it down, 8 people that are wanting to go to Circle K.
Okay. That are coming off the highway.
And that's basically what the concern is, right?
Well, yeah, the concern was, and how this would ever happen is kind of, I couldn't reconcile it in my head. But so what they say is, okay, so you turn onto 13th and you're in the straight lane, and then it has the right in turn only. So the straight lane keeps going straight. That traffic isn't affected. These people merge to the right and go to the right in turn only. And what they're saying is, for some reason, all of those cars would stop in the turn lane rather than going into the Circle K property and back traffic up all the way out to the highway.
Yeah, so there had to be a massive amount of people going to Circle K.
Right. And I mean, there's 6,500 cars, they said, a day on that road or whatever. Great, but there's really about 2 hours during the day where
it's crazy.
It's an issue, right? And so we're talking about 2 hours during the day. And I find it hard to believe that people would stop and back traffic up all that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long way.
You would have to get a couple of 18-wheelers that are just slow turning.
Semis aren't going to be able to go in there. It's cars only.
Gotcha.
Semis have to go down to 21st, so it's cars only.
It's cars only.
Yeah, right?
You just keep answering all my questions.
They keep calling it a truck stop. It is not a truck stop. Yeah. It's a big gas station with 3 diesel lanes for people that have campers and trailers, and there may be some semi-traffic here or there, but it's going to be hard for them to get in and out of there, so I believe they'll continue to go over to Schatz's.
Yeah, in my mind, it makes no sense for the truckers to go to that place. I haven't been to every Circle K, but I haven't seen one that's like set up for a truck stop. No. And Schatz has a really great setup for truckers.
Well, and they do. They have a lot of space. They have the parking area. They have the big truck wash. I mean, that was a truck stop. And so this being a large gas station, if you want to call it that, there's not going to be an issue with semis. And I think that was a little bit of scare or fear tactics that they were trying, to say, hey, and they kept calling it the truck stop, right? And that irritated me too. So I'll be honest.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. Obviously,
the only portion of that whole conversation that I was disappointed in, and I'm going to take off. Well, I'm not going to take off my city council hat. I'm going to say, as a city council member and as a citizen of Minot, I was a little taken aback by the mayor's comments.
Yeah.
While I understand we're going to have disagreements up there and we're not always going to see eye to eye, for anybody on the city council to imply that both the business and the developer would not care if there was a fatality accident there and that the blood is on our hands. I mean, those are terms and rhetoric, again, that we're using to try to scare people.
Yeah.
I think it could have, I understand the mayor wasn't for the project. I get it. But I think what was said could have been said a little bit more tactfully, to imply that Mr. Coughlin, who has given the better part of 40 or 50 years of his life to developing and helping bring things to Minot, doesn't care about Minot or what happens here. I didn't appreciate that either. That's as a council member or as a community member.
Yeah, they were very strong comments. To say that the developer would go back to Florida and just enjoy his paycheck.
Yeah, just count his money or whatever.
That's not very. I think that's a little bit egregious. And then you have the blood on the hands. It's on our hands. It's very, very strong.
And I heard your guys' point the next day. Like, if you're so worried, and I thought it was a fantastic point. If you're so worried about driving in Minot and accidents and blood on your hands, then let's outlaw booze.
Yeah.
Right? You can't drink in the city limits of Minot, because I guarantee you more people will drive drunk, get in an accident and die than will happen at that gas station pulling into there off of that right-hand turn-in lane.
Right. Yeah. Where does the concern for safety end?
Yeah.
There needs to be a concern for safety. There needs to be a concern for the future of Minot as far as like the development and how much ability. To say that you would go and not allow people to turn off of Broadway, like it is insane. Like, even now, that'd be insane. Maybe you should go and set up more middle dividers, which still could be done if you're too concerned about left turns.
Yep.
But to say that people aren't going to be able to turn off Broadway, like, you want to talk about a problem, you get the alcohol ordinance and how only certain people can get the licenses, or there's only a certain amount of licenses.
Yep.
I mean, go and take away people's ability to turn on and off of Broadway, and that would really decrease the value that they have. And I know that wasn't directly discussed, but I mean, that's an expectation. It's a busy road, it's a main road, and that was brought up by one of the council people. Well, I don't know. I think we're a little bit too far on the safety side on that one.
I think again, and I'm just going to be blunt. I think the safety argument is just a way to whip up the emotions of the public, right? Because I mean, while they say, okay, it's the 25th most dangerous intersection, none of that had to deal with turning off onto 13th Avenue,
right?
Or 13th Street.
That was the weird. That was the part that was weird.
I mean, it was all cross traffic. So again, a little bit of theatrics maybe going on there, and I didn't appreciate it. Like I said.
Do you think this tells developers that Minot is actually open to development?
I hope it starts to spread the message that, hey, Minot's mindset is changing. There's some people there now that are looking at things and want to do things a little bit more forward thinking with development and economic growth in Minot.
This is the second big project that you guys have allowed to pass, might be the way to put it. The other one would be Northern Plains Ags.
Yeah.
Northern Plains Ag. So yeah, hopefully that message starts to get out. Maybe
I think it will.
Maybe Walmart come back.
Maybe they will. Maybe Costco or Sam's or somebody will show up, right?
Yeah, so. Exactly. That'd be neat.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there is a lot of potential for development north, and we could use, and Marketplace, love you, but we could use a grocery store, a big time grocery store up there.
Well, I think
eventually.
we need. I'll be honest there too. I think we need somebody to compete with Marketplace, right? Because Marketplace 100%. And Cashwise are owned by the same corporation. Okay. So there's no competition in Minot other than Walmart for those places.
Right.
And competition is healthy. It helps the community. It helps the development. So I think it would be great if Walmart or even another large grocery chain were to decide, hey, we want to open another facility up there.
I think that would play well with the base.
Now, did you hear the other day, did you see Hoven's been talking about the Sentinel project? Because they're concerned. They're concerned with the cost skyrocketing. So rather than stretching this out over the next 10 to 20 years, they're talking about possibly doing it all at one time.
Accelerating it.
Right now.
That would hurt. I know it could be a great thing, but it's also going to be very scary.
It is, because we are not prepared for it, honestly, from a housing point of view.
Yeah.
And I think an amenities point of view too. If we have that number of people come in here, 2 to 4,000, we're going to be kind of in a similar situation to where we were right after the flood, right? Yep. It's so we got to get things turned and going the right way.
So now's the time to become a developer.
I don't know if I would tell you that, but if you've been doing it and you want to develop some lots for people to build houses on, I would say please start.
Is the city almost out of lots?
Well, and again, I'm just going to go off of what I remember hearing a few sessions ago in one of our council meetings. I believe we have somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 shovel-ready lots, meaning, undeveloped lots, 1,000 to 1,200 undeveloped lots, and then about between 250 and 300 shovel-ready lots where they could dig and build a house there. We need to get infrastructure into place in some of those ones that are undeveloped, water, sewer, electrical, all that, curb and gutter. We need to start that process. The developers need to start that process so we can hopefully have some of that ready to go if things do accelerate and come to Minot sooner than we were thinking.
Is there a chance, this is going to put you on the spot
real
hard on this one,
okay.
Is there a chance that there'll be development around the Ramstead school area? You know what I'm talking about?
Up north?
Yeah.
I think so.
Do you know who owns that land?
I believe there's a portion of it owned by the city, and then there's a portion of it owned by some other people too. Yeah.
So if the portion that's owned by the city, do you think that ever gets sold by the city, or is there a reason why that's owned by the city?
I think it was. Well, how did it work?
I know I'm putting you way on the spot.
No, I'm just trying to remember how it worked. So I think whatever it was, I don't remember if the land was given to the city for Ramstead or if it was bought. That was a portion of it. Mm-hmm. And then they only used so much, and they were holding back the other in case they ever needed to expand or anything like that. But I think at this point, I don't think we're going to get to the point where we need to expand, a football field for or a middle school or anything like that, or beyond what they currently have. Yeah. So I think it would be okay to sell that. Yeah.
Interesting. That was that's interesting deal, because that place, that area, you could use some houses. It would certainly really make it look nice up there.
Well, I mean, here's the fight that's been going on in Minot for 50 years, right? Minot, for whatever reason, people don't like to live up north because everything seems to be down south, right? Yeah. And so trying to force development into an area is hard. So what we need to do, exactly to your point, is bring more things to North Hill, so then it'll naturally start to develop in and around those things, right?
Well, that McDonald's, that's a busy place.
Absolutely. You got 300 high school kids walking over there to eat lunch every day, first of all.
And I think that they've got to have a nasty breakfast rush. They've got good breakfast food, but it's that their breakfast rush has to be brutal, because you got right in the middle subdivisions. So people are like, I'll just stop, get breakfast, and it's on their way. It's for sure on the way.
I would tell you this, if I lived up and around there, just because all the high school kids over there, I would not ever stop at that McDonald's. It's just too busy.
Would you ever stop at a McDonald's?
I do once in a while for my kids, not for me personally.
Yeah. I feel like that's not one of your consumables.
It isn't. Trip loves his double cheeseburger, and Teague loves his chicken nuggets. So once in a while, when we're not cooking dinner, we'll stop and pick it up.
Sacrifice for the kids.
Yeah.
The Valvoline, from what I see, I haven't talked to the people, but from what I see, they're not as busy. But I think that as people begin to build their days around that, it becomes part of their life, that it'll pick up for them, and I think that's what their plan is. And then you got that new bank that's going up there.
Yep.
So
First International, isn't it? I'm sorry, Town and Country Credit Union.
Okay. Or I think it's North Star. It's one of the credit unions. You might be right.
Yeah, I think it's Town and Country. But if I'm wrong, somebody call me out on it. I'm sure.
Oh, they will.
So
they people are starting to call us out, and I love it.
I do too.
Yeah, do it more.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, that's what we want to do. We want to hear from the public, interact with us. So tell us what we get right, tell us what we get wrong, and then make fun of us for other stuff like Halloween pictures or whatever. So
that was money, man. We even cut that one out, threw it on Facebook.
That was hilarious. You guys totally got me. My wife has watched that, and the other night we were sitting there watching TV, and she's like, "Hey, did you see this?" And I don't know, she'd taken it and cut that clip out where I finally look at the screen and start laughing, and I was like, "Oh, you think that's funny?" Huh? So she just shows me that clip.
Nice.
So
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
But
very cool.
Statewide now. Okay, moving on to the state stuff. Or were we done with the city? Did you have any more there?
No, that's good for the city.
Okay, statewide, what'd you think of the measure stuff?
Yeah, so measure 1, that's fine. It is what it is. Measure 2, I always get 2 and 3 mixed up.
2 was making it harder to get ballot initiatives.
And that failed, and that's a good thing.
Yep.
3 limited the amount that could be taken from the legacy fund. I'm honestly not as knowledgeable on this one as I should be. I don't know why this is such an important thing to do and why it's coming up right now.
Well, I think it came up right now, and it's an important thing to do, or at least in the legislator's mind, because they didn't want to have to take the money out of the legacy fund. That was an initiative strictly to thwart
number 4,
the property tax thing, right? Oh, hey, we can't pay for it out of the legacy fund
because it feels really good.
Yeah,
it feels like, oh wow, the legislature is taking initiative and limiting.
Well, let me ask you a question though. If you can never take more than 5% out, right? You can never take more than 5% out. What are we going to do with all that money that just keeps building up every year?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's going to take.
It's at $12 billion right now.
Right, and already 15. One thing about it is that like 5% now is probably what 15% was 10 years ago. I think that's an interesting perspective that I've thrown out there. So it like
you want to play semantics? Is that what you're doing here?
Yeah, I'm playing with semantics here. The fact of the matter though is what you're saying is it'll never be able to be spent. So does that eventually go and pay for the government of North Dakota? What as you see it, what ends up happening with the legacy fund?
That's a great question.
We'll have Hogue on and we'll ask him. Majority leader.
Get him on because I got some other things I want to. Him and I are going to try and discuss too, versus based on the flood control stuff.
Okay,
I think the state. One of the things as far as city council goes, but with the state, I'm going to sit down with some of the state legislators and start talking to them because of the increased costs that we're seeing right now in the flood control. Right now, the share is 65-35. We have the money in the state, and it's rainy day funds, right? Well, what better rainy day fund than flood protection?
Legit rainy day.
Let's get it up to the state takes 85, and we only have 15% or 90-10. So, I know we're concerned about the costs, and so let's have the state step up and help us, so us as citizens don't have to keep eating these increases. Because I'll be honest with you, like when Ackerman Esfold goes and does an estimate, they build in a 30 to 40% buffer, right? I mean, and then it comes in 30 to 40% over that.
They nail their buffer.
Yeah. So, like we're seeing costs, and I think what'll help us. Kind of like I just was talking about with Hoven. Even the federal government is concerned with the costs of things. So they're trying to accelerate projects and get it done. So if we are going to do the flood control as fast as we possibly can without slowing it down, so everybody doesn't have to pay their flood insurance premiums, then let's see if the state can step up and help us a little bit more with a little bit more share, because that's our money. That's not their money. That's our money as a state. And so what are you going to use it for? Yeah. Now, to go back and answer your question, what is it going to be used for? I don't know, because right now, the way it continues to build and grow, I think the legislators just use it as a piggy bank for their projects they want,
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Like, in the back of your mind, you're like, are they wanting it to get to a point where they don't have to? I know this is far fetched, but they don't want to have to tax, or they don't have an income tax, and basically it becomes their main source of revenue.
What do you mean an income tax? We only pay 2-3% in North Dakota anyway, right? I mean, there's nothing there. Like, okay, say they get rid of sales tax. I don't think they can do that, but I mean, that's 5% from the state every year. So
that'd be beautiful.
Well, it would, but what are they going to, if they won't get rid of property tax, do you think anybody's ever going to vote to get rid of sales tax? So
yeah, but why would this state shouldn't care about property tax?
With all the money they have, you mean?
Well, with the fact that the state doesn't get gets very minimal revenue from it.
$3 billion a year?
No, the cities do. What I'm saying is like it doesn't actually affect the state budget.
Well, it doesn't affect the state budget
directly,
tremendously, right? But I mean, don't kid yourself. Those funds that aren't being sent back to the cities are being used at the state level for pet projects.
I believe that.
And pork, as they call it, or what I'll call it. So no, I would. I've had a conversation with a couple different people, and David Hogue it sounds like he's on board to talk about something like that to help us as a city. So
cool. That's exciting.
Yeah. So we're going to hopefully work on that over the next few months.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Yeah. What else? So Measure 4 didn't pass?
Measure 4 didn't pass. So I will be different than what some will like, but I guess I'll be in line with about 65%, 70% North Dakota. I'm not upset that it didn't pass. Okay. What I'm upset about is that it did not pass close.
Well, and I agree, because I think all of our thought process is if it wasn't close, because some people in the legislature had said we may just ignore it then. But did you see the headline in yesterday morning's paper?
Well, I saw that. Maybe not yesterday morning's paper, because I don't read the Minot Daily, but I joke.
Yeah.
But I saw that Governor-elect Armstrong said this needs to be a priority.
Yep. This is his priority in the next legislative session, is to fix property tax.
Right.
And so, and he said it directly in his comments, if we don't, it will be brought back to us again, and next time it will pass.
Right. And I believe that.
I do too.
I think that and again, this is my take, I think that if it was a better written bill, and what do I know about bills, fair measure, whatever, better written measure, that maybe it would have had a higher chance of passing. Obviously, you're always going to have critics of it. It will never be able to be perfect. Though, I will say this, it may never be able to be perfect, but Measure 5, I did not hear that many critics on.
I didn't either.
I heard people that didn't support legalizing marijuana, but I heard a lot of people say this is the best written marijuana bill that has come into the state. So I think that if it was Measure 4 is better written, then potentially there was just a lot of questions, and because of that, the opposition was able to run very far.
Do you know what's odd though? And I mean, you were driving around the state doing some stuff. I'd been in Bismarck for some things.
This is going to be a good point.
Did you see any signs ever that said vote no on Measure 4 anywhere?
I believe I did. Okay. But your point is very valid, because I saw a way more of that neon green.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really makes you wonder, right? If you didn't see anybody that was vocally supporting the vote no.
Yeah. Why? How do bills like that fail?
Yeah.
It's a huge question. How do they fail so substantially? And another one, and I knew nothing about politics at this time, and I have not taken the time to go back and research it, but supposedly several years ago there was a bill that came up that was going to make us like Alaska with our oil money revenue, where there would be checks given out to North Dakotans. Yeah. And that didn't pass. Why in the world did that not pass?
Well, because the legislators want to keep that money for them to use. They don't want to give it back to us.
For sure, but why wouldn't the people put it in place?
I don't know. Well, again, I think there's so much noise, right?
Yeah, and this part's true.
There's so much noise from everywhere. We're going to have to do this. We're going to have to raise income tax 10%. Right? I mean, the scare tactics, the hyperbole, the rhetoric, all of it. There's so much noise. People don't know what to believe, right? Yeah. And we've talked about this quite a bit in different things, the federal election and everything else. I think when things like that happen, two things are going on. Number one, people are a little bit uneducated, meaning they haven't gone out to truly see what the bill is about and what the ramifications would be one way or the other.
Yeah.
And two, they're listening to the noise, right?
Yeah,
or there's so much, they're like, well, I don't know what to do, and they just don't vote.
Yeah, because, and I agree with this, if you don't know how to vote, probably the safest vote is no, okay. On a measure. If you don't know how to vote, probably the safest, because you're not making change. But the fact of the matter is, get educated so you know what you're voting on. That's obviously the best path forward.
And what were the numbers? Do you remember? Was it about 100,000 people that voted? 65-35, I wanted to say. I don't know. Or was it 350,000 split 65-35? Gotcha. I don't remember what it was.
I can pull it up. What do you think, and I'm going to switch gears and I'll pull up that, but what do you think about how many votes Ashley Golke got at the Ward County?
What was it, 11%, right? Like, she got 11% of the vote that day?
Yeah, she got 11%. She got 7,000 votes.
Yeah.
So 11% is very high because the highest vote getter got 21%.
Yeah, I mean,
so she got half of the highest vote getter.
Yeah, I was surprised. Again, why am I surprised? Well, she'd said quite a while ago she was dropping out of the race. So why did everybody vote for her? It wasn't like if she got elected, she was actually going to serve.
Right.
So I mean, again, is that just people uneducated that weren't paying attention, or is that people that are like, well, I don't like any of the other candidates, so I'm going to do this.
In I think Nevada, they have a none of these candidates option.
Do they really?
Yeah, it's not bad.
See, I write that in certain circumstances. There's one thing, and I won't say it on air, but one thing for the last 3 elections.
Yeah.
Yep. Anytime the person is up for re-election, I circle the circle underneath that name, and I write anybody but.
Yeah.
So.
That's fair. It's fair. Yeah. So on measure 4, it failed 63.5% to 36.5%.
What was the vote breakout though? I mean,
225,000 was voted no. 129,000 voted yes.
So about
355.
Yeah.
Total.
That's what I remember seeing. 350 thousand people. So I mean, you
get this. Here's one on the spot.
Okay.
6,000 people more voted for the measure 5.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people just showing up for measure 5 probably.
Did you see, and was it you and I that were talking about this, or maybe somebody else? Julie Fedorchak. She got more votes than anybody else in the state for any. Crazy. Yeah, and I mean, good for her.
Do you know why? I think because I think that she hasn't, respectfully, this is not a slap at her. She hasn't done anything yet. She's been public service commissioner, which is doing something. I get that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the federal level. She hasn't done anything yet. Yeah. People are upset at Kramer.
Yeah.
But they won't vote Democrat.
Right.
So they just stop voting.
Yeah.
And he is going to get in because North Dakota.
Well, he got 66% of the vote.
He got a ton.
Yeah.
And it should have been a tight race. Well, I'm not like down to the wire tight, but it should have been a tighter race than it has been in years past this year.
You think so?
Yeah, it should have been.
For his spot in the Senate?
It should have been because this is where I come from with that. Hoeven, I don't think Hoeven will ever have a tight race as long as he is a candidate, unless if he goes till he's 90. But Katrina Christensen it's her second time around. People know her name. There is conversations I've had with people saying, "Oh, I didn't even know that you were running," when they're talking about some of the Democratic candidates. I didn't even know that there was a good option other than the Republican candidate.
Right.
And they were looking for somebody other than a Republican. So she finally was having name recognition, and that didn't help her that much, which to me was a little bit surprising.
Well, again, I mean, and I think a lot of people, not all of them, but a lot of people go vote based off of name recognition.
Yeah.
Whether it be left, right, or otherwise, they vote based off of, well, this person's been running or he's been our senator for 4 years or 6 years or whatever it is, so I'm good with that.
Right.
So I think you have that.
You're right, and whether good, better, or indifferent, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then measure 5, that failed.
Yeah. Well, which was funny though. I mean, what did you? Was it right before or right after he got elected? Trump. Did you hear what he said? He's going to legalize marijuana nationally. So he's going to have them. He's going to have the federal government legalize marijuana.
What a guy! What a guy!
So maybe that's why all the young vote kind of swayed his way, or a bunch of them this year. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
We can end here, or unless you want to go somewhere else.
No.
I don't know if I brought this up. So obviously we've been tracking this down Dunseith.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The debacle.
Okay. Yes. Dunseith debacle. And did we talk about what Senator Kevin Kramer said on it last week?
I don't think we did. Yeah. We talked a little bit about
just the whole situation, maybe.
Yeah, just the overall, but I don't think we specifics.
So last Wednesday, he had a conversation with a radio host on KFYR.
Okay.
And he made a comment on there that basically he has it has no federal nexus. What's going on in Dunseith has no federal nexus. He has no influence with the Indy Commerce Department. Uh-huh. So maybe the person in question should just reach out to a state legislature who might actually be able to help him.
Okay. So
is that crazy to you?
It is, because isn't there an audio recording of that Lori lady talking to Kevin?
Yeah, there's an audio recording of Lori
his staffer
talking to Charles Hofer, and on that recording, Lori says, "I talked with Kramer, and he's going to reach out to someone in Commerce."
Right. So, like, that's kind of an odd thing. Like, if you have one person saying that happened, and I mean, she has no reason to really lie about it, at least in my mind. Why would he contradict that specifically? Right.
Yeah, it feels weird. I don't know. I don't know if we should believe, and I've said this over and over, like, we're still in the early parts of seeing this. We have an email full of evidence of stuff that has happened. We have other stuff. We've seen these recordings. We have a lot of stuff that we're looking through, and who knows what the actual thing that happened there. It's really hard to know.
Yeah.
But when people start dodging, it really makes you like, okay, why? Why are people dodging?
And again, I mean, I think we're all, and again, I'm not taking any shots at Senator Kramer,
right?
But I think we're all smart enough to know, and we've seen over the last 10 years at least, when politicians dodge on stuff, there's usually something odd there.
There's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason. Yep. And I honestly think that if Kramer called somebody up in Commerce and said, "Hey, could you do this for me?" that somebody might be able to do that for him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a sitting U.S. senator has a little bit more power. Even if he can't call him directly, do you think he knows enough people that could make that call for him? You know,
I don't know.
What do I know? I'm just a city council member and a podcaster, I guess. So
podcaster, things we never thought we'd say in our lives,
right? And things I never thought I'd do in my life. So anyway,
here we are.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. Thanks, Jonathan. Great conversation.
Absolutely.
That's the end of the Let's Talk About It Minot podcast. Reach out to us. Tell us what you think. Follow Jonathan's Dunseith debacle story, and we'll see you guys next week.